On the map, an arrow at the bottom indicates the direction of entry into Agartha, Antarctica. According to the report from the head of the GRU of the General Staff of the Red Army dated September 5, 1945, in June 1945, the German Navy submarine number U-530 and a special convoy, Ferrari, surrendered to the Argentine military authorities. And on August 17, another submarine, number U-977, returning from the South Pole, was discovered by an American naval squadron, driven into the mouth of the Rio Pedro River, after which the crew of the submarine surrendered to the U.S. Navy. According to the report of the submarine captain, between 1944 and May 1945, about 14 raids were carried out, transporting approximately 260 passengers and 1,000 crates of secret cargo to Antarctica, which was guarded during transit by individuals among the passengers. It is known to them that the entire convoy consisted of approximately 350 submarines. There were two types of missions: those who sailed to Antarctica and transported people and cargo. Other submarines, without identification numbers, and rescue missions that dived beneath the ice with passengers and cargo. According to our sources, Germany evacuated not only Nazi officials but also German scientists with their families and the elite of the nation. Captain of U-530, Otto Wermuth, reported that on his last mission, he delivered Adolf Hitler's personal belongings and 150 crates of valuables accompanied by masked men. Other sources claim that Adolf Hitler himself was on board U-977. According to a report from the head of the First Directorate of the NKGB, Comrade Peking, all nearby islands in the Kanternegg area were settled by German colonists between 1944 and May 1945. The governor of the South Orkney Islands since November 1944 was Dr. Fritz Bartel. A hidden German Navy garrison was stationed in the Falkland Islands, Malvinas, possessing several submarines concealed in the mountainous bay near the city of Port Center. Signed, Merkulov. Document scans and correspondence. Header, Military Counterintelligence Directorate, SMERSH. What was the reaction to Merkulov's report? The U.S. launched large-scale efforts to establish the identities of bodies found near Hitler's bunker. Forensic examinations were repeated, and leading medical institutions and experts were involved. Experiments were conducted involving dental transplants and jaw replacements on corpses, including burning remains for possible identification. Here's one of Merkulov's resolutions: urgent. Comrade Denisov, go to Vagankovskoye Cemetery and study how human corpses burn and char. Is it possible to identify people by burned features? Conduct experiments. Those aware of the substitution naturally hoped that it wasn't true, that Hitler was indeed dead. The whole world had already been informed. New interrogations of witnesses to the Führer's death were conducted. On the telegram reporting Hitler and Eva Braun's suicides, Stalin wrote, "Got what he deserved, the scoundrel." The skulls of both supposed suicides were ordered to be delivered to Moscow and displayed publicly in the Museum of the Armed Forces. Suddenly, doubts about the authenticity of the corpses began to surface. Could Hitler have escaped? Stalin's reaction is understandable, a bitter pill amid triumph. Information emerged about the Führer's special convoy and the capture of submarine crews by the Allies. The Soviet leadership issued strict orders to determine what had happened to Hitler. The aforementioned medical findings and reinvestigations of the remains found near the bunker led to disappointing conclusions: Hitler had escaped, and through Allied-controlled zones. There was no other route. All possible efforts were taken to find and capture public enemy number 1. Secret naval route maps labeled for A-class Zonder submarine captains only were found. Top secret. June 28, 1945. Moscow. People's Commissariat of State Security of the USSR. To Comrade V. N. Merkulov. Report: on June 11, 1945, SMERSH counterintelligence operatives of the 79th Rifle Corps discovered 38 such maps in the German Navy headquarters located at Berlin, Tiergarten, Turpitstrasse 38-42. Miramis, Series number 44, additional numbers attached. The translation and structure of the maps reveal under-ice underwater corridors leading into Antarctica. Each map contains diagrams, numbers, and symbols requiring decryption by astronomy and navigation experts. These keys, it is assumed, depended on the season and lunar positioning. The maps were printed in 1,500 copies at the Dachau concentration camp, 17 kilometers from Munich, Zonder laboratory, in January 1944. This highlights the high secrecy of the information and implies that all personnel involved in map production were eliminated. Attachment: maps, translated on 38 pages. Top secret. People's Commissariat of State Security. To Admiral Kuznetsov, People's Commissar of the Soviet Navy. I am forwarding 10 copies of German submarine maps, Series 44, numbers attached, discovered by SMERSH officers of the 79th Rifle Corps at the German Navy Command Headquarters. Please organize the necessary work and formulate proposals under the supervision of Comrade Gladkov, head of SMERSH Naval Counterintelligence. Signed, Merkulov, People's Commissar of State Security of the USSR. To Chief of Main SMERSH Directorate, Comrade Abakumov. I ask you to instruct SMERSH operatives in Soviet-occupied European zones to gather any operational and technical intelligence regarding the German submarine fleet and the Führer's special convoy transporting people and valuables to South America and Antarctica. Take measures to arrest and deport to Moscow key witnesses and direct participants capable of providing reliable, detailed information. Top secret. Communist Party, Bolsheviks. Central Committee. Minutes of Politburo meeting, October 1, 1945. The Politburo expresses serious concern that Adolf Hitler and his closest associates may be hiding in South American countries. Soviet intelligence services must intensify efforts to locate them, particularly Hitler, as no definitive evidence of his death has been presented. Report on actions taken and recommendations to the Central Committee by December 19, 1945. Secretary of the Central Committee. Printed in 8 copies. The above document, signed by Stalin, clearly confirms the Soviet leadership's conviction that Hitler had escaped. Hopes remain to intercept him in South America, where many prominent Nazis had fled and where preparations had long been underway to legalize their presence and continue nationalist-fascist operations in case Germany lost the war. Even early in the war, as the New Swabia project developed, infrastructure and settlements were created in South America to support Germany's underground endeavors. Nearby territories around Antarctica were being populated by Germans. Alongside the search for Hitler in South America, efforts to uncover details about the Führer's special convoy and its operations continued. Top secret. September 28, 1945. People's Commissariat of State Security of the USSR. To Comrade Merkulov. Reporting that the commander of the 21st Submarine Flotilla, Erling Kallman, and the commander of the 33rd Flotilla, Gunther Kulpert, have surrendered to the British Navy. As a result, on September 25, 1945, he was sent to the disposal of the 1st Directorate in Moscow. Signed, Abakumov. Captain Lieutenant Werner Braun, under the circumstances, chose to cooperate with Soviet authorities. Apparently, there was also personal resentment toward his commander, the head of the 21st Flotilla, who defected to the British and abandoned his loyal aide. Naturally, the British got a bigger prize, 2 flotilla commanders and a number of staff officers. The Americans also managed to persuade the submarine crews of the special convoy to cooperate. Even the aide to the flotilla commander turned out to be a success for SMERSH and the Soviet Navy. At the very least, he could help decrypt the maps. The Soviet command urgently began planning an operation to study a mysterious land called New Swabia. A secret expedition to Antarctica was being prepared. October 18, 1945. To the People's Commissar of State Security of the USSR, Comrade V. N. Merkulov. According to the approved plan, a reconnaissance convoy consisting of 3 submarines of Type K, Series 14, numbers K-56, Capsid, River Set 1, will carry out reconnaissance from October 25, 1945, to November 10, 1945, at coordinates 8 degrees 0 minutes 0 seconds south latitude and 1 degree 0 minutes 0 seconds east longitude. Please confirm the list of 3 accompanying officers of the NKGB of the USSR by October 20, 1945. According to the existing agreement, the People's Commissar of the Navy of the USSR, Admiral Kuznetsov, must instruct that 3 SMERSH and NKGB USSR personnel be included in the reconnaissance team heading to the shores of Antarctica: Captain Lavrentiev V., Major Osipkin N.S., Major Dronov K. People's Commissar of State Security of the USSR, Merkulov. The submarine commanders and SMERSH operatives began studying the unfamiliar route. Captain Werner Braun assisted with decoding the route and corresponding codes, offering valuable advice to the experienced Soviet sailors. The submarines were equipped with the latest torpedoes, depth charges, and modern navigation systems. Only the most experienced and physically fit sailors were selected for the cruise. Training sessions and drills on submarine survivability were conducted. The nature of the mission was not explained in detail. The assignment schedule was known only to a narrow circle of commanding officers. Meanwhile, in secrecy from the general crew, the maps and instructions, captured with the Union Card of Undersea Route Maps, were studied. These were to be used only during maneuvers. Instructions for traversing the corridors and spaces leading to Agartha: dive at the point with coordinates 8 degrees south latitude and 1 degree east longitude. Depth 400 meters. Follow instructions precisely. Begin the dive at low speed, with a 16 degrees starboard tilt, trim forward at a 5 degrees angle. Target depth 500 meters. For surfacing, shift ballast, trim aft, 23 degrees upward angle, 22 degrees right, to a depth of 190 meters, distance 75.5 nautical miles. A complex maneuver: dive with 15 degrees trim forward to a depth of 240 meters, distance 60 nautical miles. Then a 20 degrees port tilt, continue diving to 310 meters to enter the surfacing corridor. Trim aft, 45 degrees upward angle, surface through Agartha's entrance. Distance 70 nautical miles. Proceed into Agartha at full speed. Open instructions in packet number 3 only upon entering the map. Warning: when moving across the grotto's surface, airborne and underwater objects may appear. Do not engage these objects. Estimated duration: 8 days. Upon return, submit the map to the classified department. In case of danger, destroy it first. Mark: Special Laboratory, Dachau Concentration Camp, January 1944. Stamp: Representative of Command, Navy Captain Kalmar. Signatures in the margins and at the bottom of the map. Additional handwritten notes. The movement diagram was attached. The best crews of Soviet submarines, having celebrated victory and hoping for peace, suddenly received an unprecedented combat mission. They were ordered to undertake a mystical mission: cross great distances to Antarctica, dive beneath its icy crust, travel 1,500 nautical miles over 8 days into the inner earth, conduct reconnaissance of New Swabia, of which they had never heard, and, if possible, capture and deliver Hitler to the USSR. Even seasoned submariners might be overwhelmed by such a task. And today, it still feels mystical, especially given how our understanding of the Earth's structure, both before and after the war, differed drastically from what was taught in schools, universities, and naval academies. The German maps contain instructions that are hard for a normal person to comprehend. For example, move across the grotto surface at an 8 degrees starboard tilt, distance 286 nautical miles. Where on earth is there a grotto 286 miles long? But that's not all. After those 286 miles, the instructions say to execute a complex maneuver: 13 degrees trim forward, dive to 240 meters, distance 60 miles. Then another 70 miles, plus 43, plus another 70, and then surface through Agartha's entrance. This is verbatim. Continue at full speed until the morning light is visible. Ignore compass anomalies or magnetic shifts. Note at the bottom of the map, warning. At the beginning of the path, disregard foreign sounds or signals, e.g., croaking. And again, while moving through the grotto's surface, airborne and underwater objects may appear. Do not fire on them. The entrance to Agartha is marked with a red line. Let us reflect once more on this bizarre data. Who charted these paths to the cradle of mankind? Who calculated these depths, angles, and trims? Ancient sources, myths, and legends speak of flying machines, flying saucers, and even ancient nuclear or laser-like weapons. But submarines? Nothing, except for Jules Verne's fantastical novel 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and his Captain Nemo, which we devoured as children. The map shows an arrow pointing to Agartha's entrance. Below is a larger-scale depiction I have selected. In 1945, a detachment of Soviet submarines embarked on an unusual mission. However, the Soviet sailors were not destined to accomplish a heroic feat for most of the journey. The submarines traveled on the surface, but when the first one submerged in the designated area, 68 degrees south latitude, it was immediately attacked by 10 flying saucers, against which torpedo weapons were ineffective. They had to retreat. The entrance to Agartha and Hitler, who was there, were well guarded. Nonetheless, a disappointing report was submitted to the Supreme Commander-in-Chief about the failure to complete the party and Soviet government's combat mission. Upon return, all crew members and those involved in organizing the expedition signed a non-disclosure agreement to keep state secrets for life. Therefore, no names are mentioned. The Central Committee of the Communist Party, Bolsheviks, reported, for reconnaissance purposes, in November-December 1945, 3 Type K Series 14 submarines, K-56, K-53, and K-53E, were sent to Queen Maud Land by order of the Navy People's Commissar. Using German submarine navigation maps, when K-56 submerged at the point corresponding to the coordinates on map number 0029 and reached 100 meters depth, acoustic equipment detected the movement of about 10 unknown targets around the cruiser. These targets changed direction at 66 knots, 3 times the surface speed of the cruiser. This was the first time Soviet submariners encountered such phenomena. They were dealing with unknown underwater German naval technology. Due to the abrupt changes in trajectory underwater, it was impossible to attack these targets. For a follow-up mission, it would be necessary to involve appropriate Soviet naval forces and resolve the question of conducting a combat operation at those coordinates, involving Allied naval powers. Signed, Merkulov. The only option left was to study the results of German Antarctic activity on the Earth's surface, rather than its inner cavity, hoping to find answers. A special operation by the GRU General Staff and SMERSH counterintelligence followed. During this mission, numerous German colonies were discovered in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. This was reported to Merkulov by the head of the NKGB's First Directorate, Fighting, on October 25, 1945. According to intelligence working under Line A, all nearby islands in the Atlantic and Pacific had become overcrowded with Germans. It was established that in the port city of Port Center on the Falkland, Malvinas, Islands, a German Navy garrison was concealed in the mountains. This garrison included several submarines docked in a mountain bay near Port Center and Darwin. The garrison numbered about 1,000 people. Local residents stated that the Germans arrived in late 1944, early 1945. The village of Miss Pechka near Porthard was renamed Bergenfjord, now home to about 500 German families. German colonies were also found in South Georgia, the South Sandwich Islands, Easter Island, Tahiti, and the Kingdom of Tonga. The Tongan defense minister personally supported the German settlers. Later, new intelligence reports emerged. South of 60 degrees south latitude, the Antarctic Treaty prohibits military activities. However, on New Swabia territory, Queen Maud Land, the German station, Neumayer 3, is active. According to Soviet intelligence, the Nazis were developing not only the inner Earth as a refuge in case of Hitler's failure but also nearby surface territories. During the Nuremberg trials, this issue was carefully avoided by the Allies. There were no questions about Hitler's escape. There are many oddities regarding the tribunal and the security of the major Nazi criminals. Notably, they failed to safeguard those who could have revealed key secrets, including those about Antarctica. Himmler, Göring, and Bormann were not found. Even Heydrich's suicide in Spandau raises doubts. The Americans also conducted an Antarctic expedition named High Jump, disguised as scientific research. For science, they mobilized an aircraft carrier, 12 surface ships, a submarine, and 25 combat aircraft. British intelligence officers were aboard. On January 18, 1947, approximately 50,000 aerial photographs were taken. When the submarine attempted to approach Agartha's entrance, the fleet was attacked by flying saucers. The crew suffered psychological trauma. 2 destroyers were sunk, the aircraft carrier was seriously damaged, several planes were destroyed, and around 400 personnel were killed. No official data on the expedition's results were published. All participants signed non-disclosure agreements. A year later, the magazine Brezent published an excerpt from Admiral Byrd's report to a secret commission. Later, he hinted to journalists that he was writing memoirs. Soon afterward, he died in a car accident. Antarctica keeps its secrets. Since then, the USSR, USA, and Great Britain have made no further attempts to penetrate Antarctica's inner world but have intensified scientific research on its surface. These are excerpts from the book Overturned World: Secrets of the Past, Mysteries of the Future. Author, Colonel General Leonid Ivashov, an expert in geopolitics, international relations, and military history, and president of the Academy of Geopolitical Problems. That is all. Best wishes.